Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Monday, February 20th, 2017 edition of VR News. Let's start with the game of golf. Now, specifically, VR Golf Online. It's a game just released for Oculus Rift and HTC Vive. According to the reviewer, it's more arcade-style golf like Hot Shots, Mario Golf, than it is simulation-based, like Tiger Woods, or if I'm reaching real far back, Lynx, which is a good one, but an old one. So if you are into or enjoy the arcade aspect more, this may be the game for you. Now, for me personally, I've probably had enough of golfing games, to last a lifetime. Did play Hot Shots a few years ago, but having tested golf games, and when you test games, you generally don't want to ever see them again in your life. And then working for a company that was absolutely golf crazy, where everything was determined on the golf course. Promotions, opportunities, you get my drift, right? And some of you may be able to relate to that. It doesn't help your interest in golf. It can force it to get better, but not necessarily enjoy it more. And that's kind of where I am. And of course, half of that is tongue-in-cheek, but I will probably pass. With that said, plus it has no multiplayer. And for a game like that, while single player is fun, it would be awesome to do VR online multiplayer tournaments. That would be, a golf game I would get into if it had that type of feature set in VR. Next up, Alienware's 13R3 laptop. Now, the 13, a reference to its screen size. It uses, which is gorgeous, by the way, an OLED touchscreen. Now, if you've never seen an OLED screen, maybe you've got a buddy or you yourself, well, then you would have seen one. But if you can get your hands on a first-gen PlayStation Vita, take a really colorful, vibrant game like Persona 4 Golden, compare that to the LCD version, night and day. See if I can find a picture or a couple of video just to throw up, just to give you an idea. OLED is gorgeous, and that's definitely pretty cool to have the touch screen on there. Apparently very fast for cursor interactions and finger capability for contact. Quad HD, somewhere in between 1080p and 4K. Core i7 7700 HQ processor, 16 gigs of DDR4 SSD. You get the point. The best piece of hardware in there is probably the 1060 Nvidia. With these new 1060s, we've talked about this in the past, they're only about 10 to 20% slower than their desktop counterparts. So you get a beastly VR capable machine out of this. In fact, the reviewer said medium to high for a very nice fluid experience. So yeah, no very high or ultra, but medium to high is not bad for a laptop at all. 2.5 hours of battery life kind of puts it at the low to medium end, but most of the time, except when you're traveling, when you set up on the other end, you've probably got a second keyboard and a mouse and, some kind of a more permanent situation or arrangement that you're going to take advantage of. Next news story concerns Star Citizen. And the headline is, Star Citizen may still get VR support. Now, a few weeks ago, we talked about Ben Perry, who's one of the graphic programmers at Star Citizen, when he was asked about the Amazon Lumberyard engine and what the impact on VR would be. And at the time, which got everybody up in arms, he seemed to indicate it wasn't a priority of theirs. Almost brushed it under like it wasn't going to happen. At least that was the perception. Since then, he's come out and his response was, "Hi, I should probably let this lie, but I wanted to clarify that, if at all, was definitely not what I was getting at. I was answering a simple, does X mean we get Y type question from a tech perspective, and the answer is no, it doesn't, because that's not the main hurdle. I didn't in any way intend to suggest it had been removed from the plan." Now, to be fair, most people at the time were up in arms based on something that simply wasn't true. And that item that simply wasn't true was that it was a funding, virtual reality was a funding goal. No, It was not. And I mentioned this at the time. The only mention of VR, and it was never mentioned directly, was you would have the ability in your hangar to view it Oculus Rift compatible. That was it. And your hangar basically means where you store your ships and your items. That's it. That was the only mention ever. Now, with that said, do I wish the whole game was going to be in VR or will be in VR? Hell yeah. I think it is the type of game that if it can live up to the incredible baggage of hype that it has trailing behind it, it would do wonders for VR, just like Elite Dangerous has done a lot of good for VR. But at this point, I think people are just, wow, hopefully this releases, in my lifetime or my child's lifetime. But games take a long time. And when you've got almost ongoing scope creep, it's a moving target, your finish date. And unfortunately, until that stops, this will probably be the order of the day. All right, HTC's Alvin Graylin. So he's the China region president, mentioned him many times on this show. He was a guest on one of Kent Bai's podcasts. And I've mentioned these podcasts as being excellent. Usually listen to them during my commute to or from work. And it was interesting what he had to say because he was talking about China, his experience with China since he went there in 1994. And a lot of this ties into recent discussions on the forums of the channel here, where we've had those discussions about favoring China, and which wasn't the case. It was more an appreciation that China has so readily adopted VR as a technology they want to get behind. I think when you've got the private and public sector kind of excited about something, neat stuff can start to happen. And that's kind of the angle that I think a lot of us were coming from. That in no way condones political stuff. I mean, that's not what this is about. Those are definitely there and they're factors, and everybody's going to react or talk about those differently. But for me and a lot of you specifically, I know it was just the opportunity that VR has there. He touches on a lot of that. Part of it is the emerging middle class. You've got people and a growing class that wants to spend money. You've also got a government which no longer wants to see their country viewed as just the world's manufacturing arm. They want to be innovators. They want to go into space. I mean, all these things that you're seeing. So from that point of view, yeah, I've got absolutely no problem with that. I think that's fantastic. This is going to benefit virtual reality, but that comes with some negatives. I'm not going to get political into it, just to say that under their system, the one party, state system, some things are regulated heavily and then other things almost not at all. Case in point, some of the safety standards. They have a housing market literally that's been flirting at the edge of probably the biggest real estate bubble the world has ever seen. And if that explodes, it's going to be just, holy crap, hold on to your seats. There are almost entire districts being built with nobody living in them. Row after row of concrete skyscrapers that 10 to 15 years later are starting to crumble. Elevators and escalators that are eating people because there's no enforced safety standards, right? Those are the things that worry me about VR, right? If some horrible accident was to happen at some theme park, some VR theme park in China, obviously it would be horrible for the people. That would be the primary thing it would be horrible for, but it wouldn't do the reputation of VR any good. And it's that stuff that you kind of worry about. But the rest of it, hey, they've got the money and they're willing to spend it on VR. Keep it coming because it means the world is going to benefit as well. Next story involves Microsoft's Hololens. So they have basically indicated or hinted at not releasing a new version until 2019, indicating that they probably may not release a version 2, instead go straight to 3 because they felt that the incremental updates were just too small. They want to make it a significant, plus grow the existing market. And that makes sense. The HoloLens has all kinds of potential, and marketing that for a couple of years and building up that foundation while you work on the third one, probably not a bad idea. Plus, and there's that tie into VR, it allows them to focus on VR this year as opposed to spreading their resources. Even though they've got different departments, it's still, you've got your entire organization focused on one set of objectives. So, kind of my take. Next story, VRCameraman turns your HTC Vive into a virtual film camera. Just immensely cool, and not for the reasons brought up in the article. They talk about it, and the author touched on this too, as a means to record in-game footage. You can make trailers for things. You could advertise and market your game in all kinds of new exciting ways by filming sequences. But same idea as the author, I was thinking immediately, you could make your own animated series, like a GTA 5 starring Trevor, probably one of my favorite video game characters of all time, just up to all kinds of hijinks, right? And record it like an animated short with this camera system. It's just got all kinds of potential, and then training and you name it. Such a cool, simple concept that has all kinds of cool ramifications as a result of its existence. Very freaking cool. Last story, guys. 6 VR apps that are using parenthood to make a powerful impact. What this has to do is with a bunch of virtual reality stories centering around not just parenthood, but family. I've seen Pearl and Alumet. Pearl I liked because I could relate to it. Pearl was all about a father-daughter relationship dynamic, taking care of his little girl as she's growing, and then eventually her taking care of him as he's old and basically gets put in a home. It's kind of sad and macabre in a way because it all happens within about 3 minutes, but touching at the same time, obviously. And reminds me, as someone who was a young parent and is now through most of that, because she's in her 20s, I loved starting young because I didn't know any better. And these VR shows kind of focus on a lot of that too, the challenges of parenthood. If I knew now, or if I knew what I know now then, oh man, I would have probably ran for the hills. But I didn't know. I just assumed every obstacle was something you overcome because that's what parents do, and you just kind of march forward, right? It's only with a little bit more wisdom, hopefully, and time that you realize, holy crap, I did that and got through it. Yeah. So for those of you like me who are parents, you may enjoy some of these. I'll include links for them all down below. All right, guys, that is it for this Monday. That means tomorrow is Tuesday and Gaming Friday is still very far away, but it's a day closer. Cheers, guys.